Hey, gotcha. All right, let's do it. We have an author on tomorrow, Chris Navalta. He's got like a soccer children's book, and then a baseball author in a few weeks. I sent you the email that's got like the PDF of the ebook that you can read. He's gonna mail us copies too.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to have you with us. I'm on the road. James Peterson is in our Broadway studios, and we've got a fun show lined up for you, as we always try to do. Gordy Chiesa is going to swing by. Lots to talk about in the land of NBA playoffs. And, of course, we haven't yet heard his thoughts on the Jazz picking number 2. The same is true of Thurl Bailey. Big T is going to join us in hour number 3. That'll be at 1 o'clock. We'll pick his brain about his preferences on which player maybe he sees in a Utah Jazz uniform eventually. And we catch up with Tom Callahan on the ongoing NHL playoffs and a Utah Mammoth off season that I think is going to be one of the more interesting kind of sports business studies we have seen in the state of Utah in recent years, because the leap from being a playoff team to a playoff contender, like an actual championship chasing playoff team, I think you can make an argument is a more significant leap than just going from being, bubble team or and also ran to being a playoff team. The gap between right now the Utah Mammoth and the Colorado Avalanche is, I think, going to be harder to make up than the gap that you had to close in order to make it into the Stanley Cup playoffs. But we'll see. Looking around the world of sports right now, the NBA playoffs continuing. You can watch those down at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main, the NHL playoffs. You can watch all of those games at Big Willie's as well. They do giveaways, they do drink and food specials. They've got trivia nights, they've got bingo nights, they've got poker nights. There's something going on every night down at 1717 South Main. Make sure you tell them OC sent you. Have a little bit of a good time while you're down there, and imbibe if that's what you're into. If not, go shoot some pool, have a little bit of fun. Tell Patrick and Michelle we said hello. Pardon me. Donovan Mitchell came out of I won't say slump, a hibernation of kind of base level goodness, and had a star turn performance last night for the Cleveland Cavaliers to help them even their playoff series at 2 games apiece. He scored 39 points in the second half of the game. If he had made one more free throw, he would have had the NBA record. He would have stood alone in the NBA for having the record of most second half points in a playoff series. 39 points in the second half, and he was instrumental in a run that helped them, like I said, draw even with the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Eric Sleepy Floyd in 1987, by the way, is the guy who he tied with. The second half outburst tied Eric Sleepy Floyd's record in 1987. And, of course, that was the 87 Golden State Warriors against the Los Angeles Lakers. And James already knew that. I didn't have to tell James Peterson. He was a big Eric Sleepy Floyd fan back in the late 80s, right, James?
Yeah, he wasn't sleeping that night, OC.
Got him. And of course, you were like minus 7 years old or something, so you were definitely a big fan of Eric Sleepy Floyd when that happened.
Yeah, I was tuning in from the other side, as it were, from wherever your beliefs take you to where we are before we were born. That's where I was tuning in.
All right, great. Game 5 will be tomorrow night at Little Caesars Arena, which I've never been to Little Caesars Arena. I don't care how nice Little Caesars Arena could be the basketball equivalent of SoFi Stadium. And the fact that it's called Little Caesars Arena automatically diminishes it in my mind and makes it just like a low budget crap building. That's probably really unfair to everybody that, designed it, built it, plays in it, works there. But does it not do the same thing for you, James, where you hear Little Caesars Arena and you're just like, oh yeah, it's a $5 hot and ready arena. There's no way that it's good.
Yeah, you can't. So they're not allowed to charge more than, I think is the hot and ready $10 now? I don't even know.
I don't know.
It's not quite. It's over $5 because of inflation, but they can't charge more than the hot and ready for tickets. That's got to be the rule for Little Caesars Arena. If not, then they're just committing massive fraud, right?
Oh, the Little Caesars hot and ready classic pepperoni pizza is now priced anywhere from $5.55 to $7.99 plus.
So not quite $9.99. Okay.
That still makes me sick. Like it's like you're charging me near $10 for the hot and ready pizza. Come on, Little Caesars. Now I'm never going to go to your arena. Sorry.
I've heard from some of the Jazz writers and other writers that have come into Salt Lake to cover their teams that the pizza actually is really good there. I don't know though, because I stopped eating Little Caesars a long time ago. I'm not sure that the pizza can be that great, but I've heard it's great at Little Caesars Arena.
Well, I hope that's the case for some level of redemption. 112-103, the final score there. But again, the biggest story was Donovan Mitchell starting in the late first half and then finishing it in the second half, kind of putting the team on his back for 43 points, 39 of which came in the second half. He was plus 28 on the night. Evan Mobley had 17 points and 8 rebounds. He was plus 30 on the night. So the starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers really did the heavy lifting against the Detroit Pistons, and that series is now tied up 2-2. And there's a reason I'm starting the show today talking about Donovan Mitchell, because for me, Donovan Mitchell is the last guy that the Utah Jazz had on the team that I felt like in a competitive game, in a real scenario, in a what we hope will again soon be a playoff chase, Donovan Mitchell was one of those guys where you felt like, all right, we have someone that can go basket for basket, blow for blow with your top player. And it's probably unfair to everyone who's on the roster now and everyone who's been on the roster since Donovan Mitchell. And it's unfair to the Lowry Markkanens of the world to say that's the last guy that, in a Jazz uniform, that I can associate with that kind of confidence, that kind of belief, that kind of like when it really comes down to it and you're getting to playoff basketball, every NBA playoff team has some level of a star, some level of an all-star, some level of a performer that hopefully in an ideal scenario for his home city can kind of put the load on his back and carry a team forward. The Utah Jazz are in a position with pick number 2 in this upcoming draft, with the development that has happened on the roster so far, where hopefully they have to be deciding sooner than later who that player is for them, who the next guy, who the next Donovan Mitchell is, where it's just like, all right, you know what, if we're getting to this level, we're getting to this where we've got 9 seconds left and a final possession and a timeout coming out of that, we can draw things up. Who are we getting the ball to? Who are we letting play ISO ball? Who are we letting be the hero? Who are we designing that final shot for? And hopefully you get to a situation sooner than later with this draft pick, whether it is AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson. I think that's probably the only list of candidates, and I was being extra generous. I really think it's only Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa that are on that list. In any case, hopefully you're getting to a situation sooner than later where the debate is, all right, well, is this guy ready to do this right now? Are we drawing something up for Lauri Markkanen? Are we drawing something up for Keontae George to surprise people? Are we letting Ace Bailey be the guy with the ball in his hands 2 years from now? Or is it going to be the 2026 number 2 overall draft pick that you say, man, this first half has kind of sucked? I'm Will Hardy. It's halftime. Guys, we need someone to carry us forward. We need someone to turn this thing on. We need someone to light a fire. And we know that we've got Jaren Jackson Jr., who's going to get us a couple defensive stops and an outlet pass and a fast break and whatever else. We know that we're going to have Walker Kessler pulling down some boards if you miss the first shot or if the other team misses their shot and, again, creates an opportunity for us to get running. Now, who is going to be the one? It's a hypothetical at this moment because we don't know, right? We don't know who the draft pick is going to be. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are in a situation right now where you have a James Harden who has been that player for other teams, not to a level where they've actually won anything in the playoffs, not to a level where you feel real good about trusting him to push you over a certain hump from, contender to, or from playoff team to actual contender. That's just unfortunately not James Harden's lot in life. Donovan Mitchell, I still have some belief that, before it's all said and done for him, he can be a guy who's the number 1 piece on an actual championship contender. The Knicks look like they're going to cause problems for everyone else in the East right now. Whoever comes out of the East looks like they're going to run into the buzzsaw of the Oklahoma City Thunder again. But watching Donovan Mitchell do that and knowing like he can actually do that a little bit more consistently, if he turns it on in the playoffs, this is a guy that I think you can say, hey, we saw him in a Jazz uniform, and his ceiling is like one of these guys who can do most of the heavy lifting in a playoff series. Who is the next guy like that on this Utah Jazz roster? For some of you, he's probably on the roster already. For others of you, I think it's whoever this draft pick is, number 2 here in 2026 in 6 weeks. I think your belief is probably that it'll be that guy next. But I know that Donovan Mitchell, for me, was the last one that I had any like sincere belief could be that and could do that. Again, respect to Lauri Markkanen because he's never had the tools around him, and he's also never had a full like, all right, we're going to let you do everything you can. We're going to let you play as much as you want to play. We're going to let you we're going to take the governor chip off. We're not going to hold back at all, and let's see what you can do. Maybe it's Lauri. Maybe it's Ace. Maybe it's somebody a little bit more surprising like Keontae, and maybe it is Darren Peterson. But I look forward to when the Utah Jazz have a Donovan Mitchell-type player back on the roster. In other NBA basketball news, and perhaps more compelling and fascinating NBA basketball news, I already mentioned Oklahoma City continues their run through this playoff. They are as dominant a team in the West as we have seen recently. They deserve to be talked about as a potential, this might be the little sapling, the little seed, the sprout of a dynasty that's happening right in front of us with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren and the pieces around them that are, quite frankly, they're doing it without their second best player again, and they swept the Lakers. They swept the Lakers team that, while plagued by some of their own injuries and plagued by the absence, of course, of Luka Doncic, has a guy who for many years was the best player in the world and is still a top 10 player in the world in a 41-year-old LeBron James who played 40 minutes, casually had 24 points and 12 rebounds in a game against Oklahoma City. And I know plenty of people get sick of, talking about LeBron, debating about LeBron. LeBron is not the GOAT. It's Michael Jordan, or the younger generation might think LeBron is the GOAT. Michael Jordan benefited from the greatest coach in the game, the greatest teammates in the game, whatever. I'm less interested in that and just more interested in what happens with LeBron James moving forward. Of course, post-game, he was asked exactly that. And like you're going to get from every player in this age category, like you got from Tom Brady for so many years, like you're getting from Aaron Rodgers even now, LeBron James gave the answer that you would expect. I'm going to go and I'm going to evaluate. I'm going to recalibrate. I'm going to see what works for my family. I've got a lot of decisions to make, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. LeBron, the truth of the matter is LeBron's going to be he's going to be 42 years old at the end of this year. December 30th, as Gordy always reminds us, is his birthday. He's going to be 42 years old. He averaged this year as a 41-year-old man in the NBA 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. LeBron James could reasonably play until he's 45 at the very least and still be a plus player in the NBA. He could still be a bona fide starter and above average all-star caliber, flirting with all-star caliber type guy until he's 45 years old. It was a big deal for him that he wanted to play with Bronny. His son Bryce is going into his sophomore year at Arizona. He's eligible for the 2027 draft after he's foregone the opportunity, and really he had no business trying to declare for this 2026 draft. LeBron could wait until 2028 to try to play with his younger son if he wanted to. I mean, that is what he is doing now in the NBA. He is still that level of player with no real signs of slowing down. Yes, he's beneath the threshold of what LeBron James used to be, but he is nowhere near even average yet. At 41, he is excelling in the NBA on a Lakers team that has been reshaped around him twice now. And I think the role is better for him to not be the guy who everyone decides every single night, stop him, throw everything at him. He's the big problem. I don't know. I have zero idea what his relationship with Luka is like. I have no awareness whether or not he still loves being in LA, whether his family still loves being in LA, whether he's decided that the endorsement opportunities and the movie production opportunities and the extracurricular stuff is all really worth it for him. But as we watch another season of LeBron James's greatness come to a close, and you see that he's still 6'9", 250, ripped, shredded, mostly healthy, still explosive. At 41, it's like, all right, well, honestly, he has done enough for the NBA, and I don't think that anything that happens from here on out is going to change his status as a first ballot Hall of Famer, as an ultimate legend, as a top 5 Mount Rushmore type player in the NBA. I don't think anything can happen between now and whenever it is he decides to retire, and it could be now, that will change his status among the league historians, among the old hats that have already decided that he's going to be second to Michael Jordan on the greatest players of all time. And I don't know how much that matters to him. I don't know. Like, whenever he's asked about it, he'll give you kind of like this BS, our games are so different. I don't really do the comparison. Stop. We know you wear the same number. You, like everyone else in your age group, idolized Michael Jordan at one point or another. You got to be flattered by the fact that you are compared to him at all. And you probably also are offended by the fact that, people won't give you that number one status, even though your longevity really kind of blows Mike's out of the water.
Easily. It easily does. Like, Michael Jordan never didn't play this many total seasons that LeBron James has played. LeBron's played more than anyone else in the history of the league, in fact. But he also retired 3 times in the time that LeBron is in the span that LeBron is still played. Like the longevity is something that LeBron will never be topped at. And especially the production that, as you already laid out, the production that he's had over that time. It's the other stuff, obviously. It's the championships. It's the fact that Jordan never lost in the NBA Finals. LeBron lost as many NBA Finals as Jordan won. You know, that kind of stuff. And LeBron is probably not. I mean, he's certainly not going to make up that. He's already lost a bunch of NBA Finals. He's probably not going to get to the 6 titles or more, and that's where he's kind of fallen short. But it's almost everything else is in LeBron's favor, and this is coming from me. I think that other stuff should hold a lot of weight. That's one of the reasons why I still think Jordan is probably the greatest. But like, you have to acknowledge that LeBron is second to none in almost every other category there.
What my dream for LeBron for the last 3 to 5 years has been that LeBron will, and I know that, you know, he has no interest in what my dreams for him are, that LeBron will decide to, okay, I'm a free agent now. And of course, you can re-up with the Lakers. Of course, you can go back to Miami. Of course, you can finish your career where it started in Cleveland, the hometown boy thing, if you wanted to. You've already written all of those stories, right? And we've written a lot of those stories in other sports with other athletes as well. You could say, there's always the Dallas Cowboys quarterback who led them to greatness. There's the Los Angeles Lakers star that you've added your name to that list. There's been, in the distant past, there's been great Knicks. In the more recent history, and in the distant past, there's been great Boston Celtics. LeBron James is the greatest Cleveland Cavalier of all time. I would love to see LeBron James just say, you know what? Somebody get my agent. He probably doesn't need his agent to do this because he's a basketball historian and he's truly passionate about the game. Give me a list of all the teams that have never won a championship. And let me go add my services at a discount, right? Let me go jump on that bandwagon and let me see if I can make a difference and put this team over the hump towards title contention.
There's a spot for you, LeBron, and we'll bring Bronny on too if that's one of your stipulations. There's a spot for both of the James players here in Salt Lake City. I'll just throw that out there.
And there's probably plenty of Jazz fans that are just like, I don't want LeBron here. LeBron's corny. LeBron's cringy. LeBron is one of the best 3 players that has ever walked the face of the planet in his particular sport. In my opinion, he might be a top 3 athlete that we have ever seen on planet Earth. And he just happened to choose to play basketball for obvious reasons that have turned him into a billionaire. But as he writes this swan song, this closing chapter, and all the talking heads, and I guess myself included, are debating what is the end of the road going to look like for LeBron James? Is next year his last year? Was this year his last year? I think LeBron's going to be one of those guys who lets us know when his last year is. I think it's important for LeBron to get the farewell tour. I think LeBron is unlike some other stars in that he needs and wants the validation. He wants the farewell tour. Some people are critical of him for that. I kind of go both ways because one half of me is just like, dude, why do you care so much about what people think? Your resume is above reproach. Your history is above reproach. Your reputation is above reproach. On the other half of it, I'm like, you know what, though? Like, no matter how good LeBron has been, it has never been good enough for a lot of people. And so, of course, it would create this very strange dynamic, this like unloved child dynamic in his own mind, where he's just like, dude, how many finals do I have to play in before you acknowledge that it's just as hard to get to these championship runs as it is to win them sometimes, in any case. He's trying to write this final chapter. There are 10 different teams in the NBA that he could just say, yeah, I'll play for you on a $10 million deal and let's see what we can do. And all 10 of them would roll out the red carpet and do whatever was necessary to try to make it happen. Brooklyn, Charlotte, the Indiana Pacers, the Clippers. You probably have to wipe the Clippers off because you can't go across town in LA, although you wouldn't even have to move, so maybe.
Yeah, I think that part of what's important to him as he ends his career is staying in LA because of the off the court brand stuff that he's been able to do. The Braun movie, the production company that's taken off and all that stuff. Like, that's a big reason why he wanted to be a Laker in the first place. So, I mean, you can stay in LA and be a Clipper and do all of that.
You could. The Memphis Grizzlies, though, they would say, yeah, LeBron, come on over. The Minnesota Timberwolves really interesting. I mean, they're in title contention right now. And they've got a really good thing going on. LeBron might not be a recipe, something you want to add to that recipe in Minnesota, if it's going to cause friction with the group you already have. But if you're one little piece away and a piece like LeBron, again, the pie in the sky was going to make himself available to you, might be interesting. He's not going to New Orleans, although the Pelicans would be happy to have him. He's not going to Orlando, although the Magic would love to have him. Phoenix, I mean, in another world, I could see LeBron James being like, yeah, dude, a lot of people like to finish things out in Phoenix. Phoenix has a certain level of appeal. And then, of course, there's the Utah Jazz, who have also never won an NBA title, who, if you are currently a hater on LeBron James, I totally understand. If LeBron James called Ryan Smith, called Dwayne Wade, and was just like, you know what, I'm going to try to do something that Mike never did, that Larry Bird never did.
Mike wasn't able to win one with the Wizards, okay?
Like, I'm gonna try to add myself to an unlikely title mix, and I'm gonna be the thing that drags this wagon over the finish line, and that's gonna further my legacy. I mean, he's done so much. I know that this is an absurd sort of like hypothetical, but it's the last thing he could do to actually improve his standing in the annals of basketball history, to deliver a title to a franchise that has never won a title. Beyond that, another all-star appearance doesn't matter. Another scoring title, if he was able to win one, doesn't matter.
MVP would matter, but he's not winning another MVP.
He's not going to win another MVP. And would it matter in like the comparative to Michael Jordan, to Kobe Bryant? Maybe a little bit, but probably not much. The same thing with winning a title for the Utah Jazz, for the Orlando Magic, for the Indiana Pacers. Again, it's not just so simple as, oh, you have LeBron James, now you're going to win a title. Clearly, because he's on an LA Lakers roster that has one other top 10 player in the world on that roster, and they just got swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I'm listening to Stephen A. Smith and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie and all these guys debate what's going to happen with Michael Jordan's legacy, career. Is he done? No, nobody thinks he's done. Is next year his last year? Well, is he done in LA? A lot of people think he's done with the Lakers at least. I'm curious. How do you improve upon what LeBron James has already done? How do you do it without tarnishing things? Like Tom Brady, when he came back and decided he was going to play for Tampa, I was like, man, what are you doing? And then I was wrong the first run because he won a title with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he proved the point. He put the debate to rest about whether or not Bill Belichick was more responsible for the Patriots' success or Tom Brady was more responsible for the Patriots' success. And then he stayed again. And he sacrificed his family to the altar of football excellence. And he ended up going out with a whimper, like so many great athletes do. I weirdly, I've never been a LeBron James fan necessarily, but I don't want to see his career end in a whimper either. So getting swept out of the playoffs, that qualifies as a whimper for me. I'd like to see some better version of an end for LeBron James. Do you think we get one more year out of him, James?
I think at least that. I'm not sure what motivates him at this point, OC, other than just loving to play basketball. He talked about it in the post-game presser. He loves the grind. He loves getting to the arena early, getting to practice and working on his game. That's obviously a huge motivation for anybody who plays sports, right? I would think particularly professional athletes who aren't completely spoiled by the money. But I don't know how much it motivates him to just let's go hop on a team that's one piece away from a championship the way it used to, right? He just seems to be a guy that loves doing this, loves competing. But is that going to be enough for him to play and as long as he could play, like you said, 45 years plus? I think he certainly could. I would bet that he's going to play at least 2 more years, but I don't know. Maybe I could also see him after next season in particular being like, you know what? I love doing this, but not enough to keep playing in the NBA. I don't know.
He also has like a movie production company. All the reasons, remember however many years ago when everyone was just like, this is why he wants to be in LA? All that's still a factor. All that's still happening for LeBron. He's been pretty successful in those pursuits. Space Jam notwithstanding, that sucked. But I don't know. He could play till he's 50, honestly, at this rate.
He really could. I mean, I'm thinking of it about a generation ago when I was like pretty young watching the NBA. I remember Kevin Willis, 42 years old, built like a tank, still playing like less than 5 to 10 minutes a game for a Spurs championship team. I'm like, LeBron's like 10 years away from being that bad of a basketball player. You know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like. So he probably would retire before he's that kind of a bit player in the league, OC. But if he wanted to just keep playing just for the sake of playing, he could be that type of player. He feels like I said, he feels like he's a decade away from his game being reduced to that level. So who knows how long he's going to play.
I mean, Robert Parrish was that guy.
That's true. In the late 90s, yeah.
96, 97. He was 43 years old as a big man, played that long. He played 1,611 regular season games. LeBron James has played 1,622. So very, very similar regular season loads for those guys. LeBron has also played nearly 300 career playoff games, which is bananas. But anyway, we got to take a break. Gordy Chase is going to swing by. We'll talk to him about the Jazz winning the number 2 spot in the upcoming NBA draft. We'll get his thoughts on how much longer he thinks we see LeBron James on an NBA basketball floor. And of course, should we just hand the Oklahoma City Thunder the title now? Another sweep. Yikes. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in our resident NBA guru, my friend, Mr. Gordy Chiesa. Lots to talk about with Gordy as the playoffs continue. And, of course, as the Utah Jazz with good news coming out of the NBA draft lottery. Gordy, how are you?
Sean, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Tell me your Mother's Day reaction when you found out that the Utah Jazz would be picking number 2 in this upcoming NBA draft.
I was giddy. I was absolutely thrilled. It was amazing how it played out. And number 2 is a great pick because all 4 guys in the top of the draft, you can make a discussion. One, objectively, they're all going to be all-stars eventually. And 2 out of the 4, and 3 out of the 4, or all 4, will be difference makers for their franchises. They're ultra-talented players, and the Jazz at 2 are going to get somebody that will be an all-star very shortly. And that's how talented these guys are. And they're all different, Sean. One's a small forward, one's a 2-guard, one is I'll call him a power forward, and then Caleb Wilson, he's a running forward, I'll call him. And they're all unbelievable. So the Jazz at 2, I'm ecstatic for everybody that's a Jazz fan.
And, of course, the soap opera, the debates begin on the right thing to do with this number 2 pick. The Washington Wizards, multiple reports have said they're willing to entertain offers. They're willing to talk about trading out of the number 1 spot because, just like you said, there's, 3, 4, maybe 5 players in this draft that could be franchise changers. And Washington has the luxury of just having acquired a couple of all-star caliber guys this past season to get to play them yet. They were tanking like the Jazz were successfully. But for the Utah Jazz, and for the obvious reasons of the previous connections, the BYU pipeline, the whatever else, is there a strong possibility in your mind that they would spend what it takes to move up from 2 to 1, knowing that what's available at 2 is probably good enough for your franchise, but you might not get A.J. DeBonsa, who has a connection to the state and the ownership already?
There's 2 parts of that. Here's the first thing. Sean, think about the fan base of Washington Wizards. See, again, like as always, you live in a certain city, so you're absolutely only thinking about your team, the world according to your team. Now, you're the Wizards. You don't lose like that to trade the first pick of the draft. And also, it sounds really crazy, but they actually need his position. So besides, meaning A.J. DeBonsa, besides being an unbelievable talent, they need his position at small forward. Last year, the small forward was Keyshawn George. So they're going to draft him at 1, and the Jazz are going to pick at 2. So it's all speculation. Everyone's playing gamemanship. I understand it. It's all part of professional sports. But you don't lose to trade the first pick to get some more other picks. You do not do that to the fan base, and also there's definitely a need. And with the Banter, they're getting if the Wizards do draft them, which they should, they're getting an unbelievable major talent to step in and help the franchise. So quickly, here's the Washington Wizards starting lineup: Trae Young, Bilal Coulibaly, who's very good as far as a Frenchman, A.J. DeBonsa at small forward, Anthony Davis at power forward, and Alexander Sarr, the Frenchman, who's very good also at center. And so if all 5 of those guys this summer all stay good, it'll be a really good team.
So, okay, let's operate under that premise that the Utah Jazz are going to stay at number 2. A.J. DeBonsa is gone at 1. Is it simple? You go Darren Peterson, even with the questions that we've had about Darren Peterson, the cramping issues, the health situations that he's had, and you assume that those things will be better at the NBA level?
Yes, very much. Darren Peterson, Sean, and the listeners, just picture Ray Allen of the Miami Heat. Formerly, I coached him at Seattle Sonics. That's Darren Peterson. His jump shot is absolutely beautiful. He has classic footwork. He plays like Ray Allen, younger version of Rip Hamilton of yesteryear, and the current guys would be, he has talent like Anthony Edwards, as far as explosive, Stefan Castle type, and Jalen Green of the Suns. That's who he plays like as far as his game, his athleticism, his talent level, and his ball skills. And so he's absolutely a guy that's could step in an NBA game and knock down, again, minimum 17 to 20 points with a high percentage, and he's got talent. So he's 6'5". He's wiry. 6'5", 205. I call him wiry strong, narrow shoulders. He's going to bulk up as far as that, but he's a high-level talent, and he has that fast twitch thing where those quick bursts, you need to get separation around the defensive players. He has it. He's a major talent. I love the guy.
The explanation that has come out is that creatine was the issue at Kansas with the cramping. I keep going back and forth on this, how much I believe it, how much I think that they've just tried to do some damage control there. I imagine that the due diligence process between now and the draft will figure out whether or not there's a significant health question with Darren Peterson. Should the Jazz be interested in drafting him?
Oh, absolutely. Sean, how about you and I? We do our own intel. If a guy's leg cramping, let's give him pickle juice out of a dill pickle jar, and let's give him some old school bananas often. And that's I'm simplifying, but I'm not. They'll do a lot of intel. They'll absolutely dissect, bisect, trisect this guy to the ultimate, where you'll be dizzy as far as doing it, and they should. And so they know what they're getting, what type of person and player. And when you're picking at number 2, you want to get it right. Last year, the Jazz at number 5, Ace Bailey, another major young talent. Everyone enjoyed watching Ace Bailey play, and hopefully that second pick of the draft, Darren Peterson. And again, you can make a strong discussion for Cameron Boozer, who's a tremendous talent. I'll call him a back-to-the-basket player with an element of a face-up game. He's a superior passer. He knows how to play with the ball, without the ball, and he has a presence and poise around the court. And then Caleb Wilson, he's a jumping jack, kangaroo leaper, 6'9", 6'10". He plays like Evan Mobley of the Cavs, Jabari Smith of the Rockets, Aaron Gordon of the Nuggets, and a younger version of Kevin Garnett. He glides into his shot. He plays airborne. He can play both vertically and horizontally. Again, he's a major talent. He broke his thumb last year back in February 10th. So we didn't see him all the time as far as in the March Madness in the top stage of the ACC tournament. But he's a major talent also.
Should the Utah Jazz factor in the likelihood of whoever you draft wanting to stay in Utah, re-signing with Utah when they make the decision on who to draft, assuming they're staying at number 2?
That's a great myth about, if Utah, they can't keep the guys. Says who? Donovan Mitchell, they traded it away. Remember now, Mitchell, they had him. And remember, the way the rules are, the first 5 years of your contract, the team that has you has the leverage on you. So 5 years from now, think about it later on. But the first 5 years, whoever they draft, they're getting a major talent. So remember, the Jazz, they let go Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. So they had him under contract. They let him go. So, again, that's a myth right now.
Let me ask you this: Did they decide they wanted? Did they decide they wanted to move on from Donovan because they were starting to read the tea leaves that when it came down to it, Donovan was going to leave the way that Gordon Hayward and other players have done? That there was a chemistry issue with him and Rudy. Maybe you could have convinced one or both of them to stay, but how much of the decision to trade was like, well, let's get some value out of this so we don't get left in the lurch like we were with Gordon Hayward?
Well, Donovan Mitchell is way better than Gordon Hayward and Rudy Gobert as a position. So those two guys are way better than Gordon Hayward as far as what he did as far as winning in the playoffs. Again, case by case, the dynamics. What age group are you in? You're 24 years old, 25. You view the world differently when you're 29, 30 years old. So again, that'll be a discussion that the Jazz, whoever they draft, that's only part of it. But when you're picking so high, you've got to get the best talent available. And all 4 of these guys I mentioned have knockout talent. But also, a little side note, the Wizards general manager, Will Hawkins, he's born and raised in the Boston area. So I'm assuming that he knows all of A.J. DeBancer's people very, very well. His AU coach, his people that are around him as far as everyone that guides him, and plus the family, he knows them well. A.J. DeBancer's father used to be a security guard at Boston University on campus. And so these are all things that you have to understand that they're going to do all intel on all four of these guys, and hopefully each team will get it right for them, because I'm sure they're all good guys as far as young people, and as from a basketball standpoint, they can help a franchise, absolutely all four.
We probably spend too much time worrying about the Utah Jazz reputation around the league in terms of guys wanting to stay or not wanting to stay. What about Washington? I mean, I think it's a valid question. When's the last time that the Washington Bullets or the Washington Wizards had anything good or did anything good with great players? Because, that should factor in here as well. I mean, A.J. DeBancer didn't look overly thrilled when the camera was on him when Washington got the first pick. I don't know if his facial expression would have been different had it been Utah or anybody else. But what should we be thinking about, the desire of these rookies to go play for Washington, even at number one?
Well, the first thing is that they might be slightly unhappy in the beginning, but as the weeks, months, and years go on, is that they will be able to understand the franchise, how it's better. Again, this is very similar to the Jazz. They're trying to reinvent themselves as far as getting the right players for their team. And A.J. DeBancer, if they do draft him, he would be a centerpiece of that. So that's what they're trying to attempt to do. I call it turnaround skills, as far as you have certain players in your organization that really do want to win. And I'm assuming that the Wizards, those guys, when they traded for Trae Young, who's also a talent as far as a point guard that can score, he's going to help whoever they draft at number one. I'm assuming A.J. DeBancer become the best player he can possibly be. So every team has different dynamics involved, and that's why teams either win or why they lose. A quick side note about the Wizards, they're trying to turn it around. They've had 7 straight losing seasons. And so they think at number one, whoever they take number one, that this guy is going to be the cornerstone to help them get away from that as far as minimum. Anthony Davis, again, there'll be a lot of talk about him this summer. I don't want to be there. Yes, I do. Again, the point is that they have leverage on Anthony Davis. He's under contract. So, a lot of times the agent says things or the people around the player says things, but what is the player saying? 2 different things.
Gordy Chiesa for a few more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. So we make
Sean,
we make it a.
Donovan Mitchell, Sean, isn't human.
How about his second half performance last night to even that series?
One for the ages. Here's the quick math about it. 39 points in the second half, where he tied Eric Sleepy Floyd for the most points in the second half of a playoff game, which happened on May 10th, 1987. So, Sean, 39 years ago. And with Donovan last night, besides scoring the points, it's how he got them. Jump shots, step backs over the top of a good defense on him, driving to the basket, really getting in the lane, using footwork, dancing to score. Remarkable about this performance is that besides the 43 points he scored, he only had 1 turnover, Sean. 1 turnover, 1 miscue in 37 minutes. And that's impressive. And then James Harden, his trusted sidekick, also has some good moments. And now it's 2-2, and they go back to the play in Detroit, and it really is a series. So, again, in Jazz basketball, is that Donovan was a former alumni. He's now in the Cavaliers, and he's flourishing. Donovan's one of the best players of all time as far as in playoff points per game. He's up there in the top 6 as far as scoring, and that's how good he is as far as how the defense tries to guard him. He can counter that with a high skill level.
The Oklahoma City Thunder swept LeBron and the Lakers out of these playoffs. You and I have talked about LeBron a lot. He's 42 years old at the end of this year. He's still averaging 27 and 7. The guy could play for however long he wants, in my opinion. What does his future look like?
Well, the first thing he said last night, he's going to recalibrate with his family, which I'm sure it's absolutely true. He's going to take some time off mentally, which is unbelievable. Can you imagine being LeBron James, where every minute you go, everybody knows who you are, so you have no mental relief as far as just hanging out, and that from a basketball standpoint is that you're the focal point of every team trying to stop you, and that your own team needs you to play elite every single night. That's the mental, physical part of LeBron James's life. Now, the question right now is he's an unrestricted free agent July 1st. He made last year $52.6 million. Now that stops now. So the Lakers cannot afford him as far as with their going forward. They have to pay Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves got a player option, which is going to opt out at $14.9 million. So, Sean, you and I talked about Walker Kessler's contract, roughly $30 million or so, possibly for the Jazz. He's restricted. What are the Lakers going to pay Austin Reeves? What is he worth for their franchise? Because as they go forward, he'll be the second or third option of in their world, the Lakers, of hopefully a deep playoff team, how they think it. So Austin's probably worth, they're going to have to pay him at least 38 to 42 million times 4 or 5 years. And so that's LeBron's contract. And so where does LeBron fit in? We're going to find out.
Gordy, are the NBA officials too big of a storyline right now in these playoffs? You had Austin Reeves with big problems with the officials. Jaylen Brown had really strong words. JB Bickerstaff now with some big-time words. Are the officials more visible in this playoff than they should be?
No, planning too much, and so are the coaches. They're trying to get gamemanship. No, the answer is absolutely no. Objectively, and I'm a former coach for 36 years, is that they do an unbelievable great job. You could call a foul on every possession of a playoff game, easily, especially in the lane where people are bumping bodies, perfectly normal. So the answer is no, they're not. And that's what makes it so remarkable. Remember now, with Victor Wembanyama, when he swung that elbow, that was the correct call. People ask me, did they pick on Wemby for doing that? The answer is no. That's a flagrant 2. You can't swing your arms like that and hit people above their in their head area, and that's what happened. So that call was the correct call. So the officials, they do a good job, play through it.
Did you think Wembanyama was going to get a suspension after the high elbow?
No, because it was unintentional. No, it wasn't like premeditated. This is the heat of the game. It was not. So the answer is no. I never thought he'd be suspended because the way it happened was like a bang play. Tried to get Naz Reid off him. He swung his elbow at his face. Absolutely, but it wasn't predetermined. I'm sure he regrets it right now what he did, and it affected the outcome of that game. And now it's 2-2. Sean, a long time ago, back in December 14th, 1991, in Jazz basketball, and I was there front and center to say the least. Karl Malone gave Isaiah Thomas 42 stitches in the forehead area and also on his face. And Karl was suspended for 1 game without pay, and he got fined $10,000. And that was a vicious elbow by Karl. What happened before that? They took Karl's head off as far as him going to the basket by Lambier. Lambier took his head off, and later on Stockton, about 2 plays, went in the lane, took his head off. So that was like a bang, 3 things in a row, and Karl responded to that. Karl was suspended. Victor Wembanyama, many years later, was not. It was the right thing to do as far as Wembanyama not suspending him.
I already mentioned Oklahoma City's looked incredibly dominant through these playoffs. The Knicks are starting to build a case in the Eastern Conference even more so. Who else, though, is still a contender as we're watching these games play with a couple other series tied up at 2 apiece?
You're saying, how about the T-Wolves? See, again, they're in this place called Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they're in the middle of the country. So it's not East Coast bias or West Coast, as far as Love Fest. All right, so the T-Wolves, it's going to be a good game. Yeah, Game 5 is tonight in San Antonio. Game 6 is going to be in Minnesota. And Lord willing, in the NBA's world, they want to have a Game 7. And, Sean, it's so interesting about the playoffs. There's nothing like it. There's so many subplots within the game and also the days before up in the game. So just think about what happened in the playoffs this season. There was 3 game 7s in the first round, 3, and there was 2 sweeps so far this playoff series. So 3 game 7s, and then there was 2 times already there was 2 sweeps. So you think you know something, you don't know anything, because what happens in the games are decided by the players on the court, and each game takes a different intensity level and a different path. And that's why, as a player or a coach, you've got to prepare, but you've got to stay in the moment. Don't think about things the next game. Get through that game as far as what you need to do. And that's why it's so important to be able to stay in the moment if you're a player on the court. Don't think about things that happen as far as missed shots 2 minutes ago. Make the next shot as far as when you take it.
Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, my list today is Sean. And I did this ironically, Sean. I promise you this. I'm being truthful. I did this yesterday morning, not last night. So the list was the most career 40-plus point games in playoff history, the most by a player. And then Donovan Mitchell last night got it. So it was so interesting how it played out. All right, top 12 of all time, most ever career 40-plus point games in postseason. Number 12, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it 9 times. And remember now, with Kareem, no 3-point shots. Number 11 all-time, Allen Iverson with 10. Tied for 9th all-time with 11, Hakeem Olajuwon and James Harden. Tied for 8th all-time, Shaquille O'Neal with 12. I tied for 6th, Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain. They did it 13 times, 40-plus point games or more. Tied for 4th all-time, Elgin Baylor and Kevin Durant. They did it 14 times. The third best career most 40-point games is Jerry West with 20 times. Number 2 is LeBron James, did it 29 times. And the number 1 player in the history of basketball and postseason with the most ever 40-plus point games is Michael Jordan. He did it 38 times. 40 points and more in a playoff game, which is outrageous. How about quickly, Jazz basketball? Karl Malone did it 4 times, 40 points or more, including one 50-piece masterpiece back in 2000 versus the Sonics. And mention Donovan Mitchell has done it 8 times in his career. He did it 4 times with the Jazz, including also in the 2020 bubble in Orlando. Donovan scored 57 points and 51 points against the Denver Nuggets. So when you're scoring 40 points in a playoff game, you have unbelievable talent and ball skills. Thus, that's my list of today.
Gordy, always appreciate your time and your expertise, my friend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Stay well.
That's Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru. We get to keep it up with him throughout the playoffs and a little bit into the summer as the draft approaches. Utah Jazz picking number 2. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM has the Festival of Tees going on right now, powered by the Utah Golf Association, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. We are giving away free rounds of golf to the best courses in the state and beyond every day right here on the Sean O'Connell Show and also on The Drive with Spence Checketts. Make sure you tune in at our topical trivia around 1:45. We have free golf to Lakeside today. So be listening at 1:45 when I ask the trivia question for that. All right, we're going to double up here. We're going to come back at the top of hour number 2 with Tom Callahan, Mammoth Insider, NHL Insider, talking about the playoffs and the offseason moves that this Mammoth team need to make. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 2 on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in our friend Tom Callahan, at Callahan on Air on the old Twitter machine, host of Locked On Mammoth, as we talk some NHL playoffs and check in on some Mammoth prospects as well. Tom Callahan, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
The Golden Knights, who of course eliminated the Utah Mammoth, have moved on to a really compelling series now with the Anaheim Ducks. That one is tied up 2-2, and you've got another matchup tonight, Game 5 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Obviously, Game 5 is a crucial one in all of these series. How do you see Game 5 for the Knights and the Ducks?
You know what? I've enjoyed this series quite a bit because we are seeing a lot of different kinds of hockey within it. And some nights it's Anaheim, some nights it's Vegas. I'm still kind of thinking Anaheim has a chance in this series to beat Vegas. And again, I look back at the Utah series, and Utah showed that the Golden Knights are beatable. And I do believe that. And, you know, it's from a standpoint of what do the Ducks have? They have youth. They have some speed. They can get pucks to the net. And honestly, Vegas is a little beat up. Mark Stone has been in and out of the lineup. It's hard for them when he's not in there, but Vegas is a little older team, a little more savvy veteran team. Some guys were around to win that Stanley Cup. I mean, this is a hockey team that doesn't rattle. They're not going to freak out. So you really do have to push the play all the time against Vegas to be able to beat them. But that is exactly what I feel like Anaheim can do. And that's why the series has been so compelling. It's a little bit of the immovable object meeting the unstoppable force. And it's been some very entertaining hockey. I'm still thinking the Ducks can pull this off.
So we've made the point many times on the air that, there's quarterbacks in football, there's pitchers in baseball, there's goaltenders in hockey who have a just massively outsized influence on individual games, but also on 7-game series. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does not feel in this particular Stanley Cup playoff that any of the main storylines yet have been about a goaltender standing on their head and just being impassable and impossible to score on. Who is the hottest goaltender in these Stanley Cup playoffs right now?
That's actually a good question. And you're right. I don't know if there is one. Maybe it's Jakub Dobiš with Montreal. He really kind of came out of nowhere this year, started the year as the backup, didn't play a whole heck of a lot. By the end of the year, had stolen the starting mantle and is leading the Canadiens in that series with Buffalo 2-1. I think he's been a story. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't goaltending stories. For Anaheim, as Lucas Dostal goes, so go the Ducks, whether he's been good or bad. And certainly they'd love to see him be more consistent. I think that's a big story for them. And then with Carolina, it's crazy to realize they've swept both series. They swept Ottawa, they swept Philadelphia, and they haven't even really had a test of their goaltending. So that's another one that's almost a little bit unknown, is what's going to happen whenever Carolina faces whoever happens to be out of the Buffalo-Montreal series. And the fact that Carolina is literally going to be sitting around for a week and a half, that's going to be a story unto itself for them. I really do feel like they'll be at a big disadvantage for sitting. I don't like the way the schedule goes in this round of the playoffs, but even like Colorado, Minnesota, you're right. I mean, goaltending is not a feature story there. There really hasn't been one guy where we're looking at on the, like an Andrei Vasilevsky who just, Game 7, it's time for him to pitch another shutout. Like, there's not that guy this year, except, again, maybe Dobiš is the closest thing to it.
I was wondering how important the Wild clawing one away from the Avalanche was, if that was going to put Colorado, put any doubt in their minds and make them start to question. And then, of course, last night, 5-2, they're back firmly in control of the series. And, 3-1 is not insurmountable in NHL playoff hockey, but 3-1 is a nice little controlling stake here for an already hot Colorado Avalanche team. What do the Wild need to do to try to stay alive in that series now?
If you look at the series in the 5 games, the Wild, even when they did score 6 all the way back in game 1, Colorado scored 9.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, are you kidding me? The one game they won, they really controlled the ice and controlled Colorado's ability to handle and manage the puck. And that is the entire key for the Wild is puck possession. It's not, boy, this offense needs to get going, or boy, this, they need. Look, your goaltender could steal you one, but that's really not the point of how you're going to beat the Avalanche, because that's only going to get you one game. What they need is to play puck possession 200 feet of hockey, and they need to do it against a team that's really good at doing that itself. So to me, this comes down to basically an effort matchup from now on for the Wild. They have to win those puck battles. They have to win the face-offs. They have to control the neutral zone, and they're going to have to do it by skating their butts off, working harder than Colorado, and making smarter and better plays, which is really hard to do. Colorado is well coached. They stick to their system works, and they have the horses to run it. So if the Wild are going to somehow figure out a way to win 3 in a row against Colorado, it is all about playing chess, not checkers, and they really do have to control the puck.
The old puck to the face for Nathan McKinnon, but didn't take him off the ice much. There's not even a question here, Tom. It's just even star players. It's not glamorous for them in the NHL playoffs because he scored a goal after that.
Yeah, it's almost like a badge of honor. It's like, how messed up did your face get during the playoffs? Oh, okay, nice job. It's but it's, in all seriousness, like, hockey players are tough and they want to be out there. The stars want to be out there. Could they sit him in a 3-1 series lead situation? Sure, they could, and they could probably win without him, but they're not going to. And that is what it comes down to this time of year. The idea being, we win game 5 and then I'll get my rest. And hopefully the Ducks and Golden Knights go 7, and then I will get my rest. And so that's just how they treat it this time of year. It's a real warrior type of mentality that every single guy will battle through as much as they can possibly handle, and probably a little more, just to try to stay active in the playoffs. And you're right. It is the ultimate sacrifice this time of year. Here's a fun little thing for the listeners. I don't know if people know this. These guys aren't getting paychecks in the playoffs. The NHL pays its players in the regular season. So that way everybody gets their money over in even whatever it is, 26 weeks or something like that. But once the playoffs start, that's it. You're done getting paid for the regular season. Now the only thing they're playing for is a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And of course, the further you advance, there is something called playoff share. So you do get a little more money per player every round that you advance. But is it anywhere near your paycheck? No, it's not. It's nice, but this battle is all about the pride and the passion it takes to win the Stanley Cup.
I don't think that most of our listeners knew that. I didn't know that. And we learned some of the ins and outs of this in NFL playoffs a couple of years ago when our beloved Eric Weddle came out of retirement and ended up winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. And everyone was like, oh, he probably got a couple $1,000,000 to do that. No, it's all collectively bargained. And, you get $25,000 for the first round and then $40,000 for the next round or whatever. So when you say it, that playoff share, what kind of money this is a pittance for these guys, or it's a nice, it's like you can buy a new car with it. What are the real figures looking like for playoff share?
Whose new car are we talking about here?
Good question.
It's kind of funny, and I would have to go into the CBA to tell you, and I don't off the top of my head know how much that is. But it is kind of along the lines of that. So I'm trying to find, let's see here, just doing a real quick search. Okay, so it looks like the playoff money breaks down like this, or at least this is according to what I'm finding online, is President's Trophy winner, meaning the team, gets $500,000 as a bonus. And in the first round, the losers got $250,000 to each of the 8 teams. So Utah got $250,000 collectively, not per player. So now that's split, 23 ways. So, yeah, we're breaking it. So if you're dividing by 10, it's like $25,000. if you were to divide it 10 times, 10. So yeah, that's about what you're talking. And then it goes up second round, gets 500,000 to the 4 teams, 1.25 million to the 2 teams that lose, and then Stanley Cup final. Even if you're the Stanley Cup champion, your team gets 3.75 million. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah.
I guess
like you're not doing it for the paycheck at this point, like you said.
Yeah, you can buy a Chevy. So, although, look, you can insult me for that kind of money. That's fine. I'll lose in the first round.
Well, yeah, these guys are pulling in a little bit better weekly than you and I are on a regular basis, especially now that the salary cap went up again in the NHL, which is nice to see the continued growth of a sport that we've grown to love here. Tom Callahan, by the way, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking the continuing Stanley Cup playoffs in the absence of this Utah Mammoth team that has to watch from home, while teams like the Colorado Avalanche and the Carolina Hurricanes continue to pursue their Stanley Cup favorite odds in their respective conferences. You mentioned, Colorado trying to get through this one, get a little bit of rest. You also earlier mentioned that Carolina is maybe going to get too much rest. What is the Goldilocks zone, in your opinion, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, where 2 sweeps in a row and too much sitting around can't be good for you? It interrupts momentum, gets you a little bit slow, whatever. Versus, of course, 7-game series back to back to back becomes maybe too much of a grind. Where is the perfect balance?
To me, it depends if you're traveling or not. But if you aren't, it's 3 to 4 days is a good amount of rest, because the day after a series finishes, it allows you to give the team a day off. So if you're playing at home, you can then practice on day 2. You're not traveling on day 3. You can have another practice, another skate, and then you play to start the series on that 4th day. If you're traveling, I would like 4 days, because then you get a day off. And then again, you can do practice, travel day to your destination on the 4th day, and you start on day 5, that new series. I think that's enough to give guys a little bit of rest and recharge and keep the momentum. Whereas I've actually been on a team, now it was in the minor leagues, but I was on a team that did exactly what Carolina did, swept the first and second rounds, and then sat for 9 days. And I felt like that team should have won a championship. But seriously, incredibly rusty performances in game 1 and 2, fell behind in the series. It was 0-2, tied it up 2-2, and then lost game 5 and game 6 in overtime. So, you wonder the what ifs of that scenario. If you're not sitting for 9 days, because it took them 2 games to really get it going. The second game was closer than the first, but I think it was seriously detrimental. So I do believe that teams that tend to win a series in maybe 6 games are operating at about the optimum.
Switching gears a little bit to talk about this Utah Mammoth offseason. I've already picked your brain a little bit on this, but there's the possibility of trying to add some pieces externally. And of course, then there's this really nice pipeline of recent high draft picks that are all progressing, and some of them playing in Canadian leagues and some of them juniors, and just kind of like putting it together. And we saw a couple of guys on the big league club earlier this year. When you listen to Coach Bear, when you listen more importantly to the Armstrongs, do you think there's a hardcore commitment one way or another to let's build with what we have, or let's use some assets and maybe bring in external pieces? What is more likely for the Utah Mammoth this offseason in your mind?
I think for Utah, especially defensively, they like what they have. I think they really are enamored with their blue line and their pipeline to the blue line. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of movement there. I do think that they'll have a decision to make on a guy like Ian Cole. I don't know if there's room for him next year, especially if the possibility of maybe the graduation of someone like a Simashev or a Lamoureux to the blue line does happen. And the Nick DeSimone signing has been just, amazing. They picked him up on waivers, and the guy's been nothing but phenomenal. He's given them depth and the confidence to let the younger players develop. I think they're very happy defensively. They really do like where they're at. Up front, every team will go through shuffling in the summer. I think there's a little bit more shuffling to be done up front and decisions to be made with this Mammoth team. Barrett Hayton being an RFA, I don't think really is going to be an earth-shaking decision for them. I expect he's going to be back, no problem. Maybe the real, and we actually just talked about this on our last show, was, what kind of contract does Hayton end up getting? Is it a little shorter term, a little longer term? I think that the Mammoth really like what they have in the pipeline for the young kids up front, and I think that they're very excited about that, but they are further away, in most cases, they are further away from NHL impact than the defense. So up front, that might be where you see the opportunity to try to sign someone, shore things up a little bit in free agency. I think they like their top six. And I think they would like to see J.J. Peterka push himself back into the conversation for the top six. If anything, for the Mammoth, they're kind of shooting for the middle. They don't need a game breaker, at least as far as they're concerned. I am curious to see when Bill Armstrong talks about building a team that is physical, that's big, and can lean on you and handle that kind of weight. I felt like that was one of the shortcomings for the Mammoth in the playoffs. I felt they weren't physical enough with Vegas. I'd like to see if that's going to be addressed in the free agency. But to me, that's really, I think, the direction of the team is we might see a little more movement up front. I think they really like the defense. And then, Veg isn't going anywhere. I don't know if they're going to bring Vanacek back or not. I think personally for Vanacek, it'd be better for him to leave professionally. I would like to see him back because I like him. I'm one of the few people who's really a fan of Vitek Vanacek, but I think he's a very good goaltender. He just didn't play enough. No backup goaltender for Utah really plays enough to be good, to be effective. So that's a hard spot to be in and to want to get a guy to come in and accept, hey, you might only play 10, 15 games.
So what's the chicken and the egg on that? Veggie just likes to play that much. Bear likes to keep his guy out there, or was there a lack of trust with Vanacek, and so they kept Veggie out there more than would be ideal because they, there was not a lot of wiggle room. There was not a margin for error in the standings.
No, it's more of a Bear likes to run his number one. We talk about a 1A and a 1B with a lot of teams in the NHL for goaltenders, and it's like a 60-40 split, maybe 65-35. That is not how Andre Tourigny seems to do things. The numbers bear out that he likes to pick a starter and run with that guy. Now, it doesn't mean his starter won't change because we did see that between Veg and Connor Ingram in previous seasons. That who was the starter did go back and forth a couple of times based on how they were playing, but it's not going to be a situation where every third or every fourth game the backup knows they're going to get enough playing time to be consistent. And I do think that hinders any goaltender in a backup situation. It is almost impossible to be good when you play so little. And the other thing is too, and we've talked about this several times ourselves on the show, is that Veg seems to play better when he's pushed, when there is competition, when he feels that. And I think that drives any player to know that there is that competition. And so I would actually like to see that inspire a 1A, 1B type of setup, because you get the benefit of your goaltenders being fresher, and then you also get the benefit of both of them playing basically to try to top one another, and I think that would actually be super beneficial for the Utah Mammoth. I just don't think it's in the cards.
Tom, before I let you go, has anything happened in these Stanley Cup playoffs that change your pick for who's going to win the cup? Have you been surprised enough by either Carolina or somebody against Colorado or whatever that has changed your opinion one way or another, and who you think is going to end up skating around with Lord Stanley's Cup when it's all said and done?
I always thought that Colorado was going to be good. I am a little shocked at how easy it's been for Carolina, but I also think Ottawa and Philadelphia, like whoever came out of the Pittsburgh-Philly matchup, I didn't think was going to trouble Carolina. The fact that they haven't lost a game yet is a little surprising. Montreal has been a surprise. I actually, just for nostalgia's sake, I picked Buffalo to beat Dallas this year, and that was more of a just desserts kind of thing for me. But I mean, I've always thought Colorado was the powerhouse in the West, and nothing has changed my mind on that. I'm really curious to see who gets out of the East because any one of Buffalo, Montreal, or Carolina could easily be in the Stanley Cup final at this point. Again, it may come down to if Colorado goes through their Western Conference final through Vegas or through Anaheim, whoever they face, and it's not a long series and they're not heavily taxed. If they're sitting around, how do they react once they get to a Stanley Cup final? So I know you got to play the series. Upsets happen. I get that. But I really do feel like it's going to take a lot to beat Colorado.
I lied. I have one more question for you. I do this thing where I look at, the get-in price in certain cities, and like with the World Cup coming in, I'm looking at how cheap can you get into a game? And when you're talking about playoff hockey, playoff basketball, playoff baseball, whatever, to me, it's an indication of, just how passionate a fan base is in certain places if those prices go crazy. Right now, it's 3 times as expensive to get into a Canadians game than it is to like any other place around the league right now. And we at the Delta Center, this fan base wants to pride itself on being like the most hardcore, passionate, loud fan base in the NHL sooner than later. Who are the contenders that you have to overcome? Who are the legendary fan bases and buildings in the NHL that we're going to have to surpass to have that reputation in hockey?
I'll look back at my former employer, the Nashville Predators. I always thought that was an intimidating place to play, to come into for a road team, especially when the crowd was loud and they were into it. Chicago used to be, and I think once that team starts winning again, they will be again. That is a very difficult building to go into and a difficult fan base. A lot of the old school fan bases, I mean, you have to talk about Philadelphia. It is hard to go into Philly and do anything and even be Santa Claus in Philadelphia. And if for fans who don't know what I'm talking about, they booed Santa in Philadelphia. So that's a hard place. Montreal, their fan base is epic, and you hear them right now. Toronto, when they're going, they are too. Boston can be a hard place to play. So those are some of the ones that I think you would absolutely look at as, if you want to be in the upper echelon of NHL fan bases, those are the ones that are really, really good, solid fan bases. And I will give a shout out to the Winnipeg Jets fans, especially in the playoffs when they're doing the whiteout. That place, and they have one of the smallest arenas in the league, but because of that, they pack it. It's loud. The energy in there is crazy. So playoff Winnipeg is also a really good one.
Tom, appreciate you giving us your time and your insight yet again, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Look forward to talking again.
Tom Callahan, best in the business at Callahan on Air, NHL Playoff Insider. Now that the Mammoth are out, of course, he also hosts the Locked On Mammoth podcast. The SEC might be losing its grip on football, but it is tightening its dominance in another college sport. We'll get to that and many other things in the Daily Dump, brought to you by Valley Plumbing. That's coming up next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. You have vent problems, call Valley Plumbing. You've got a toilet that's running, Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. If you want to go avoid talking to other human beings, you don't want to call them up and set an appointment, no problem. Go to valleyplumbing.com, type it into the chat feature, set an appointment. They'll get out there today, maybe tomorrow at the latest. They'll take care of your issue. You got sprinkler problems, you've got indoor plumbing problems, you've got an air conditioner that's not working, maybe your furnace keeps firing up for no reason. Give them a call. They'll take care of it all. The truck with the duck. All right. We were talking, Tom Callahan and I just were talking about playoff shares, right? The pay that you get during playoff hockey, the pay that you get during playoff basketball. We talked about this. You go back a few years when Eric Weddle came out of retirement to win a Super Bowl with the Rams. And I was like, oh, what kind of signing bonus did they give you? And he's like, dude, you can't get special money. It's all collectively bargained, and you make a lot less during the playoffs per game than you do during the regular season. So James, while we was listening to this, as producers are, he's doing his job, a good job of it. He started looking up what playoff shares were for the respective Big Four leagues in the United States of America. And, right now the NBA playoffs are going on. How much extra money are NBA players going to get? The NHL playoffs. We just talked about that with Tom Callahan. In Major League Baseball and in the NFL, they've got their own numbers. So, James Peterson, what are the playoff share numbers in these big leagues? You're the one who did the research. I want you to elucidate. I want you to enlighten us.
Yeah, so Tom was telling us they're not playing for the money in NHL. And as you compare hockey to NBA, MLB, NFL, the other four major sports leagues in North America, he's absolutely right. The NBA champion gets the most per player for playoff share money, playoff bonuses, if you will, of the four major North American sports. Over $600,000 per player for if you played on the NBA championship team. And obviously it breaks down lower for each round. I can give you that too, OC, but let me go through the maximum first, and then and then if we want to get to that, we can get to the lower rounds too. MLB, it changes per year, from what I understand. Well, they all change per year, but MLB is, I think, the most fluid from the little bit of research I was able to do in the last half hour or so. The Dodgers last year, though, each player got over $484,000. It's the second highest playoff shares in Major League Baseball history, from what I was reading. Super Bowl champions this coming season, 2026, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was this last season. Anyway, I think it's this coming season for the 2026 NFL season. They will get $188,000 each. Significantly lower than the NBA and MLB players. And NHL, their shares come out to, let me do the math one more time. Oh yeah, their shares come out to about the same as Super Bowl champions do per player, about $188,000 each for winning this, for being on the Stanley Cup winning team. So that's how it breaks down. It's really interesting that once again the NFL, which their revenue makes the NBA teams, baseball teams, certainly hockey teams' revenue look like they don't even play professional sports like they do, and yet they are they're the same amount of playoff share for winning a Super Bowl championship as the, I think, least profitable of the four major sports leagues, NHL, as they get for being on a Stanley Cup winning team. So
that's actually pretty interesting to me. You would think that a Super Bowl, because of all the prestige, I mean, it's talked about as being, arguably the most important of all championships in American sports, and doesn't come with the big money. Now, again, guys are making great money, right? This is not about like us complaining on behalf of players for not getting paid enough. Every professional athlete is making really, really good money. And yes, there are some who, relative to their popularity, their contributions to their sports, whatever, you could make a case are underpaid or overpaid. But that's actually somewhat surprising. 600 grand ish per player for NBA champions, just under 500,000 for Major League Baseball champions, and under 200,000 for the Super Bowl champs in the NFL and for the Stanley Cup champs in the NHL. Thanks for doing that research, James.
Just one other quick note. NFL, obviously the total, because you're spreading that across 50 plus play. Was it 53-man rosters even in the playoffs, right? OC. You're spreading that almost $200,000 times 53. You're not spreading. They're not spreading. The NBA is not going 600,000 for 53 players. So the total is still more than any other sports league. But I would have expected each player to get a little bit more. But yeah, we can move on.
Okay. You're a Ted Lasso fan, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. Danny Rojas, the actor who plays Danny Rojas, is officially now a professional soccer player. Cristo Fernandez, we talked about this. I think a couple of months ago we discussed this.
He was given a tryout, right?
He's getting a tryout for the El Paso Locomotive.
Yeah,
and they've officially signed him to the club. They did like a 2-month trial period. They wanted like a robust sample to see what Cristo Fernandez was as a player. He's in his late 30s. Like he's not some like prospect, some spring chicken, but he made the team, and I get it. It's not an MLS club. It's not like he's making an NBA basketball team or something, but Cristo Fernandez, I applaud this. Anytime someone tries to do this, he doesn't have to do it, right? He's not doing this for the money. He's not doing like Ted Lasso is filming a movie now. They're not going to leave him out or put him in based on him being a professional soccer player in the USL. This is someone just pursuing a passion and doing it in El Paso instead of in LA. So good for Danny Rojas, the actor's real name in real life is Cristo Fernandez. I think that's really neat. It's so rare when people just chase these whims because it can be embarrassing if you fail. And he didn't fail. He made the team. And maybe there's an element of them wanting to capitalize on his celebrity, but he played well enough that they wanted to use a roster spot on him, and that's pretty darn cool.
Well, it goes to show, like you just said right there, when you watch him, be awesome as Danny Rojas and Ted Lasso, that's not all fake. Like, he actually can play soccer a little bit. It's cool that he's going to get a chance to do it professionally.
And by the way, I applaud it especially because whenever you see, like, there's someone needs to, maybe this is a $1 million idea. There's somebody who needs to be in charge of teaching actors how to perform sports at like an even just base level so they're believable when they play athletes in movies, right? Like there's a bunch of now combat coaches in Hollywood. There's fight coaches, there's choreographers that teach people how to throw proper punches and kicks. And the result of that is you get some pretty convincing fight scenes. That's good. You have never seen, though, like a halfway decent football throw from an actor. They can't do it. They can't throw a spiral. They don't know how to do it. They all look so terrible because they're ultimately people who make it to a certain level of success in Hollywood. They're usually theater kids that had to make a decision at age, 12, that they were going to pursue the arts instead of sports. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but man, every single time you see an actor trying to throwing more than anything else, it just looks so terrible. There needs to be a sports coach in Hollywood.
I think there are sports choreographers, basketball, whatever the case might be. I'm pretty sure there are, and I don't know how real this is in real life, but if you ever watched One Tree Hill, Skills, ends up being a basketball choreographer in Hollywood. So on that show. So, but I don't know. I mean, that's just a TV show. I don't. It made me think.
Skills Taylor was the name of the.
Yeah, Antoine Skills Taylor. Shout out.
Antoine Charles Skills Taylor, one of the main characters in One Tree Hill, played by Antoine Tanner. That's got to be interesting when you get to play a character that's got the same name as
your
you.
name. I didn't realize he had the same name as
spelled different. Antoine in the show is Antoine. Antoine in his real life is Antwon. So there it is.
They couldn't just spell it the same for him, like when they knew they were hiring and they were casting an Antoine for this. But yeah, his pickup street ball nickname is Skills, and he ends up after playing high school basketball at Tree Hill High, later ends up becoming a basketball choreographer, I think is what he calls himself. So
which one was better, Dawson's Creek or One Tree Hill? Weren't they just the same show on different networks, basically?
That's what I heard. I haven't seen Dawson's Creek, but I love One Tree Hill.
Okay.
So I probably would love Dawson's Creek. Is Dawson's Creek also basketball related?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if the Dawson's Creek.
One Tree Hill is like it's like the basketball version of Friday Night Lights with a lot less emphasis on the sport.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't watch Dawson's Creek either. So, and if you search Dawson's Creek sport, there's a real place called Dawson's Creek that it just takes you to
their high school sports.
Takes you to like their rec page.
That's what I wanted. Yeah.
We have pickleball here in Dawson's Creek. All right, fine.
No way. Tree Hill, North Carolina is not a real place, unfortunately.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, it's named after New Zealand, Tree Hill, New Zealand or something.
Yeah, one Tree Hill. There's in
monument.
Auckland, New Zealand.
Right.
There's a monument. It's like it's a hill by the city. One Tree Hill is in Auckland, New Zealand. I don't know that's where they.
I think the creator of One Tree Hill, the TV show, is from New Zealand, and so it was like an ode to their roots, but not a real place in North Carolina.
I've been to One Tree Hill in Auckland. When I fought in Auckland, we went to One Tree Hill, and it is just a beautiful like city park with a hill, and you see a lot of sheep. I think they just trot them out because that's what New Zealand is known for.
That's awesome.
All right. This one is not necessarily sports related. I did put a poll question up that is sports related based on this story, but the poll question, James, is what kind of spoiler deserves the most punishment? You spoil an important sports result, you spoil a TV show, or you spoil a movie? Which one deserves the most egregious punishment?
See, this one's tough because as I've gotten older, I've gotten less upset about getting spoiled. I'll be honest with you. So I think I ended up, by process of elimination, I ended up choosing the sports spoilers because that's what I probably care the most about, not getting spoiled. But I mean, it sucks getting. I think the next one I would probably say is the show spoiler. Movie, I don't know. Maybe that's just hasn't bothered me as much as it maybe bothers other people.
Okay, well, as far as I'm aware, just spoiling things in, like, spoiling a movie, spoiling a TV show in the United States, I think is more of like a social crime. People are going to get mad at you on the internet over it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this story, but a Japanese man has been sentenced to 18 months in prison because he published spoilers for the highly anticipated sequel Godzilla -1.
Oh no.
18 months in prison. It's like some elaborate form of copyright infringement because he runs like a movie spoiler website. He didn't even write the articles, but he hosts the site.
Oh no.
And yeah, and because he gained financially off the spoilers, he sells advertising on his website, and it's a very successful website. He got like a couple $100,000 off of these things. But they're putting him in jail for 18 months. That's bad.
That is terrible. I feel like here in the United States, maybe we're wrong. 877-353-0700 if you know better than we do, but I feel like it's there. The most could be like a civil lawsuit against you if you're doing something like that, publishing things that the production company doesn't want out yet, but you happen to know somehow. But I don't even know if that has ever really happened.
I've never had spoilers. Like I've never had my own personal spoilers on anything good. Sometimes we get sneak preview tickets to the movies that are coming out through the radio station, and it always feels cool when they take your phone.
Yeah.
Before you go into the movie, like you got to put your phone in this lockbox because we don't want anyone posting spoilers. You're like, ooh, yeah, I am seeing this Star Wars movie 3 days before everyone else gets to see it. Makes you feel special, but I've never had access to spoilers. I certainly would not want to serve any kind of jail time over posting a spoiler. So I feel bad for this guy. It's pretty rough sentence, honestly, especially because it's Godzilla. I've never seen it. Let me tell you what happens. The giant monster destroys a bunch of stuff and then mysteriously disappears back into the ocean. Spoiler.
-1 has got to mean like prequel, right? Like
so
before the first movie, kind of. Is that what -1 means?
Godzilla minus. Oh wait, no. Okay, so Godzilla -1 was the one that came out. So Godzilla -0 is the one that's coming out. Godzilla -1 was like the 50th Godzilla movie made.
Yeah.
And it was about kind of like the origin of Godzilla, new producer, new director.
Right, okay.
It was really well done. It was really cool. And it was like Godzilla during World War II, basically.
Yeah, okay. So I'm thinking along the right lines then. They're going back in time and telling you more origins of Godzilla.
Yes. So now this is the sequel to the prequel. This is
the prequel's sequel. Gotcha. So it's like
this is like 4 years after Godzilla -1.
It's like
or whatever.
It's like prequel Inception. We're going to make a sequel of a prequel that's still a prequel.
And now my brain is broken. Right? But that's your daily dump brought to you by our friends over at Valley Plumbing. Look for the truck with the duck. We'll take a quick one here. I have to give this its own segment because you will not believe what Lane Kiffin said. Gave another reason why he wanted to leave Ole Miss. And it's just vintage Lane Kiffin absurdity. I'll give you that next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. We're going to get Thurl Bailey on at the top of hour number 3, talk a little Utah Jazz. Big news for the Jazz. They're picking number 2 in the upcoming draft. A real quick segment here. I wanted to give its own spot. Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss somewhat controversially to go to LSU. Was asked yet again about his reasonings for doing it. He came up with a new one that we have not heard about until this week. And part of what Lane Kiffin said is that he wanted to leave Ole Miss partially because of the racial tensions that exist in the past and the present of the Ole Miss campus, the Ole Miss Rebels nickname, the state's history with racial segregation, with slavery, with things like that. He made some claims in a conversation that sometimes grandparents would not let recruits go to Ole Miss because of Mississippi's reputation. Now, he's in Louisiana, and Louisiana is, of course, still a southern state and has its own long and complicated history. But part of the recruiting gap, according to Lane Kiffin, between a place like LSU and Ole Miss is the racial history of Oxford, Mississippi, and of Ole Miss specifically. They just recently got rid of a lot of the Confederate imagery. It's still there from a fan perspective. It's not officially part of the actual campus anymore. There was a brilliant campaign probably about 10, 15 years ago where they were like, okay, we're going to be the Rebels, but we want a new logo, a new mascot for the Rebels. And the winning vote actually went to having Admiral Akbar, the general of the Galactic Rebellion from Star Wars, be the new mascot. But of course, copyright rules with Star Wars. Lucasfilm still owned it at the time. This was pre-Disney, I think. They wouldn't let the university have Admiral Akbar as the rebel. But in any case, Lane Kiffin is further justifying his decision to leave Ole Miss because of past problems with racism in the state. He claims that one player said, "Hey, coach, we really like you, but my grandparents aren't letting me move to Oxford, Mississippi." And he says that does not come up when you say Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Fascinating to me. I never would have even thought. Now, we hear about this with Utah, with BYU, with NBA players, obviously a predominant African-American league, saying that maybe that's not like your ideal fit to come to a place like Salt Lake City. Lack of diversity in Salt Lake City has been something that, quite frankly, the NBA team, the colleges have had to accommodate for and have had to make sure players are not worried about, and maybe still are losing out on some people because of that perception. But I never would have in a million years thought that in a southern state that has obviously a very heavy African-American population, that it would be used in a negative recruiting light, that you're in Oxford, Mississippi, because, it makes sense the way that Lane Kiffin explains it. If it was coming from anyone else besides Lane Kiffin, who's, like, in my opinion, the ultimate shyster in the college football world, I probably would take it more at face value. But feels like a hyper convenient thing for Lane Kiffin to be saying that he cares about. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm being unfair to Lane.
Where was this when you seemed like happy to stay in Oxford for the rest of your coaching career, like a year ago, basically? And like, where was it? I guess that you don't bring up negative stuff when you're willing to work through it, I suppose. But it does feel like a convenient, hey, just wanted to let everyone know this is why I did this super shady thing, leaving my college football playoff team that had a chance to win a national championship for a team that didn't even get close to winning a national championship.
And look, the history of racism and racial tension in Louisiana is equally complicated to that of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean,
And Mississippi
just,
obviously has had its problems. Like, absolutely.
I just don't understand why why somebody like Lane Kiffin feels the need to justify his decisions with anything other than, you know what? I think I can win a higher level of football game here. I think I can win championships easier here. I've got more support, more money here. It's easier to recruit here for every other reason. You don't have to bring up this one that is like a pretty nuanced and intricate social discussion that deserves hours and hours and hours of examination, not a football coach just being like, hey, guess what? I mean, maybe that anecdotal story is true. Maybe he really did try to recruit a kid and that kid's grandparents are just like, I don't want you going there. It feels disingenuous for Lane Kiffin to tell us that was a major thing as to why he doesn't want to be in Oxford, Mississippi anymore compared to LSU, which of course has a more decorated championship and more recent championship history. That's enough of a justification, coach.
Yeah.
That's it.
Did you also, real quick before we break, did you also see that Ole Miss is taking even more shots from like Steve Sarkisian said all you got to do to get a degree at Ole Miss is take basket weaving? Did you see this?
Sarkisian was talking about transferring when he says when students transfer to Texas, they lose 50% of their academic earnings. Their 50% of their credits don't transfer. First of all, Steve, I don't believe you. All right. And if that were true, and you're still asking students to transfer to Texas and lose 50% of their academic progress, you don't care about the student athlete, the student part of the student athlete. So you shouldn't put that out there into the world. You didn't think about that much, coach. But look, we know that there are plenty of schools in the SEC, plenty of schools in the Big 12, plenty of schools around the country that it's like zero demand on their student athletes from an academic standpoint. And
in North Carolina, infamously they were outed for having a fake athletes class.
they had fake online classes.
Yeah.
You would just get credits for being enrolled in online classes.
No work had to be done. Yeah.
It's like if you watch The Sopranos, they were the no-show jobs.
Yeah.
That you just got the mob just got paid something from the union for protection. They had those classes for student athletes.
Or if you've been tuning into Pablo Torre finds out and you've been following the Clippers Kawhi Leonard stuff, you also learn about a no-show job.
Yes. Wow. The Clippers are part of the mob. Steve Ballmer is the real Tony Soprano. We just found that out on the show today. All right. We're over time. We got to get to Thurl Bailey, the Utah Jazz commentator, analyst, the host of the Rise and Grind podcast, hops on next to discuss the upcoming NBA draft, the current NBA playoffs, and much more. Thurl Bailey in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3 on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Thurl Bailey, Utah Jazz legend, analyst, host of the Rise and Grind podcast. Podcast celebrating the power of perseverance, passion, and purpose, inspiring journeys for leaders, innovators, change makers across various industries. Last week, it was Live Golf CEO Scott O'Neill. This week's guest is Lee Steinberg, the one-time super agent to star athletes. Check out the Rise and Grind podcast from Thurl Bailey, wherever you get your podcast. Big T, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show again. How are you, sir?
I'm good, OC. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, I'm excited like everyone else is about the good news that this Utah Jazz organization got. It's hard to describe, right? It feels like we're waking up out of some kind of hibernation. Everyone understood the score. We all knew what this franchise had to do in this rebuild. And now it feels like, all right, we can kind of peel off this old skin and we can shed it like a snake, and we can now really hope for something good and something new. Is that an accurate description of how this fan base is feeling in your mind?
I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, we have a pretty astute fan base, right? And it's been a tough few years to be patient, but I think the patience has come because there's other things that have developed, if you will, during that rebuilding process, and it really is the resurgence, or I guess the insurgence, or the development of young players. Keontae George's development into a star player, and other young players who are going to fill some important roles. The acquisition of Tripp, of Jaren Jackson Jr. So I know our fans, there's always frustration in there during construction, right? But, when construction's just about complete, almost complete, and you can get a sense of what it looks like and feels like to be involved in that, it's very exciting. So, yeah, I think you put it in the correct way. But I truly believe, and I think our fans do, they can visualize what's coming really soon and the possibilities of where we could be this coming season.
I mean, I feel really good about the roster already, even without this. Now we found out the number 2 pick that is coming in. And, we don't know who that's going to be yet. We have a pretty good idea of who's in the running to be the number 2 pick here in this upcoming NBA draft. And, of course, there's an extra layer of conversation here because one of the top prospects is a guy that everyone in the state knows very well, played his high school ball down in Southern Utah, played his college single season at BYU, and has a relationship with some levels of this organization already in AJ DeBonsa. But the projection is that, he might be gone with the number 1 pick to the Washington Wizards. So then in comes the conversation about, well, do you try to move up? I'll try to organize my own thoughts here, Big T, but AJ DeBonsa as the number 1 player in this draft versus Darren Peterson or Cam Boozer. You've seen all of these guys. Is he the number 1 player in the draft for you?
Well, first of all, it's a great draft. I mean, even beyond the 3rd pick, it's a pretty deep draft with some really good players, and you're going to see players who may not be in that top 10, 15, 20 who are going to, surprise people and rise and thrive up through that. Personally, and part of that is because of, we're not too far removed from what BYU does in the state or any, local school, but in particular, the eyes and the focus that's been on AJ. He's a great, great player. In my opinion, is he the best potentially NBA-ready player in the draft that I've seen? Yeah, I think he is. I think he has been kind of groomed for it at BYU. I think when you look at his usage and you look at the schemes and the plays that were run for him, they're similar, if not exactly like what he's going to see wherever he goes. However, in this draft, it really is the best player available. And I know every team's going to going to say that, but I don't know if you can't really go wrong sitting where the Jazz are, even if they want and don't get AJ. Darren Peterson's a great player. He's going to be a really, really good player. Cam Boozer as well. It depends on what the Jazz need and how they see whoever they're going to be able to select fit in Will Hardy's schemes. And I'm just excited. And you're right. Even without that pick, we're looking pretty good. But with that second pick, I mean, when that lottery pick came in, if I had hair, it'd be standing straight up on my head, man, because I was so excited.
Well, with the roster as it is in mind, and the assumption that it is going to be one of the three players that we just talked about that gets added to at either 1 through a trade or at 2 where you already have that spot, most likely where you end up picking, how quickly does that guy, that top 2 pick, how quickly does he need to be contributing given what the Utah Jazz already have? I mean, does he need to be a day 1 starter in your mind?
Well, I wouldn't put that much pressure on him, and I'm saying this based on what I've heard Will Hardy talk about young players in the past. That's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot to throw at a young player, especially nowadays. These players are coming out like 18, 19, 20 years old, and the expectation is for them to try to on the outside of the locker room to try to contribute right away. I'm not sure that's super realistic. I mean, I think there's always a process for these young players when they land, and there's so much more than the game to get to get used to. It's a new environment. In some ways, it's a new culture you're landing into. So it's just a whole new process. So, yeah, I don't think, in particular here, I don't think there's any expectations to have a guy come in and just try to throw him in the mix and say, this is what you need to give us this year. I just don't see it.
Thurl Bailey is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the Utah Jazz getting the number 2 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. Where do they go with it? Well, a lot of people have different thoughts. There's going to be conversation, partially because we got to fill this next month with speculation about whether or not somebody's long-term future with the organization should be brought into consideration when picking at number 2. And it's easy to say, well, AJ DeBonsa feels like he'd be more likely to stay than anyone else because he's already shown that, he voluntarily spent his college year here. He spent his high school years in Utah. Obviously, the Boozer family has a certain familiarity and affection for this state. Carlos helps out in the front office. So maybe that's another reason why you could say, well, this young man is more likely to sign a long-term extension with Utah than like a Darren Peterson, who does not have any obvious connections to the state. Is that something, I've been asking everyone this, Big T, is that something that the front office should even be weighing when they're choosing? Because whether or not the guy wants to stay long-term, you get his first contract, you get his rookie year out of him, you get his first few years out of him, and then you obviously get to cross that bridge when you get to it. But is that prognostication something the front office should be taking into account when deciding who to pick at number 2?
I don't really see that going on in the war room. Yeah, I don't really see that popping up. I mean, it might be in the minds of folks. I mean, it's probably the easiest place for people to start in their minds, the proximity, the relationships, and all that. But the bottom line is you're trying to put a team together that can compete for a championship, and take the steps necessary to get there, which this coming year has to be playoff talk, right? So, yeah, I just don't think it's interesting because I think one of the most important parts nowadays of trying to select who you feel is a good fit for your team are the interviews, are the personal interviews. When you get a guy in the room and you understand how excited he is and know where his mind and heart is, and he's ready to come and develop and contribute. So, yeah, I just don't see those things playing. Not that it doesn't happen, but I don't see those things playing, especially where the Jazz are sitting right now, where they want to go. It really is, to have the second pick in the draft with all these great players. It really is going to be a time where they're going to focus on fit and their game and Coach Will Hardy's scheme. The current players who are going to be key, that anchor, that fundamental foundation of players like a Lauri Markkanen and Tripp and Keontae George, who are going to have a lot of responsibility. But I personally don't see those kind of things creeping into the war room when you're trying to establish a championship pedigree.
What's it like being a player already on a roster and trying to help integrate, especially a high draft pick, a highly thought of draft pick, a lottery pick? What's it like being a guy with a veteran status, with maybe some leadership qualities, and a reputation already as an established player in the league, when you get, the young, confident, maybe brash, maybe not individual who comes in as a number 2 pick and says, all right, like, I'm ready to do this. What's the integration process look like for these young men and for their older teammates?
That's a great question, OC, because I'm going to step out of the veteran role and go into my rookie season. When I was drafted by the Jazz, I was the 7th pick. Jazz had not made the playoffs. And, as Frank Layden, the late, great Frank Layden would say, we were so bad, people were calling me saying, what time's the game? And I said, well, what time can you be there? And that's how difficult it was. So going into a situation like that and then landing in Salt Lake City, and then the first couple of people that came up to me, Darrell Griffith, who had won the national championship in college like I did, so we had that connection already, came up to me and said, Thurl, look, I know you're used to winning. You're similar situation that I had, so don't get too hyped up because there's a lot of work to do for us to get to where we want to get to. We haven't done well these past seasons. Mark Eaton came and put his big old hand around me and said, welcome. A lot of work to do. So in that respect, the aspect of a team who has not won a lot in the past few years, the players, the veterans, were committed. They were committed. I mean, they were committed to trying to build something, even with the past history of being at the bottom of the league. And so I see the vets on this current team doing that and then some. And you've got to look at the culture of this team, even in losing seasons, man. It's been amazing to travel and watch these guys stick together and how Will Hardy has had them, committed, in every huddle. It's about show love. And so I like the vets on this team. I like it because they clearly have an understanding of what's ahead of them and the responsibility. And so they're going to welcome whoever that pick is and other guys with open arms.
We're anticipating this pick, anticipating what next season looks like for the Utah Jazz, while also watching the current NBA playoffs and seeing like, oh my gosh, look at how good this Oklahoma City team is. Look at how talented the Spurs are, and they're still a young team. And closing that gap is obviously a lot easier said than done. But as you're watching these NBA playoffs and seeing, the 2026 version and maybe the 2027 version of the leagues, and especially the playoffs take shape, how big is the gap for a full strength, not resting anybody, fully healthy Utah Jazz team compared to, the top of the West?
Well, you picked those two teams, the Spurs and Oklahoma City. Let's go back to, let's go back further than that, like the 2023, 24 seasons where they were trying to develop as well.
Sure.
And I think that's the thing that gets me and Jazz Nation excited, because great teams have to go through what we went through to get to where they are. And it seems now in this league today that, I mean, there's so many great athletes, but there's such a focus on not just the glue guys, the guys who need to be consistent every night for you to have a chance, but the others, who committed to defense, the Elijah Harklesses that are trying to get a spot, and what they're going to give you every single night when they go out on the floor. So I think it's exciting, because I think teams like OKC are kind of setting this example, this trend where you don't need to stack your team, with three superstars, if you will. You need a core group that can give you what you need every night, in particular on the defensive end. So, yeah, I mean, watching those teams, watching the playoffs now and the finals really gets me excited, because I think it's a different era where teams are building and teams are putting role players in place where they can thrive, Offense is important. No, don't get me wrong. You need your consistent corner three-point shooters. You need guys who can attack, getting downhill. You need rim protectors on the defensive end. But you look at OKC and how they're built. You look at you've got a freak. You've got an anomaly in San Antonio. But yeah, I think that's the exciting part, is that you've got some really good pieces here, and I'm just excited to see all those come together with the work they're going to put in here in a few months.
The less glamorous side of watching OKC dominate in these playoffs is, we just watched the Lakers get swept out, and LeBron James, who's had this incredible career at 41 years of age, a sort of unceremonious end to this campaign. And that, he is self-admittedly going back and he's reevaluating with his family what the future looks like for him. And there's some who believe his days with the Lakers are over. Clearly he can still play at an incredibly high level. 24 points and 12 rebounds in the game last night. He's 41 years old and he's still averaging more than 20 points a game in the NBA. And you're a guy who played into his late 30s. LeBron is 41 and still playing at this level. What do you think his future looks like, and where do you think his future could be?
Well, that's a good question. I think only he really knows that. I'm pretty sure he's figured out his transition. I mean, he's set himself up for success beyond the game, obviously. He can play as long as he wants to play. I mean, the guy could play till he's 45 if he wants to. Maybe it won't be with the Lakers, but if he, desires a role, a lesser role with the team, and when I say lesser, I don't mean that he's not relevant, because you just talked about his numbers at his age right now, and any team would love to have a vet who brings not just those numbers, but brings what LeBron would bring in his presence. So, who knows what he has in mind? Whether he wants to go back to Cleveland, maybe he wants to, continue where he is at a discount. Who knows? But the guy is just an example to every player, especially how to take care of yourself, how to take care of your body, and it's your main asset. So, yeah, I think the guy will. I'm not sure we've seen. I don't think he's played his last game in the league for sure, but I'm very interested to see what his decision is going to be going forward as well.
The last time we had you on, you were just kind of starting out the Rise and Grind podcast. You were just in the early days, and now, more episodes in the can and more conversations you've had with your interesting guests. How has it been for you? What have you learned? Is it what you expected it to be?
It's been great, OC. Thanks for asking that. It's been really good for me because I really understand the era we're living in right now. And as a former professional athlete and what it took to get there, that's kind of an ideal world, right? I mean, there's so many athletes that want to make it to the top level, and not a lot of them do. One, there's not a lot of spots there, but there's so much to be learned on the journey, and that is with any profession. So I wanted to do something where I could talk to people who start businesses, people who have gone through the journey, the struggle, of trying to get their product out there or trying to get people to believe in them. It's been fantastic. And tomorrow, the Lee Steinberg episode comes out, and this man has, he was at the top of his game when I met him many years ago. And then his fall because of, alcoholism, he lost everything. I mean, I say everything. I don't just mean money. I mean, family members who wouldn't speak to him, and clients, his business. But he got it all back, and what an amazing story that he tells. And he's got a new book out called The Comeback, and just an extraordinary man to talk to. Scott O'Neill, CEO of Live Golf. His episode is out right now. It's just a great, I think, medium to be able to hear these stories, because everybody has something that's going on that they're trying to achieve, and there's people who've been through it. And so it's been great to sit down with these folks and have that conversation.
I'm going to have to check out that Live Golf episode because it's a really fascinating time for that organization, obviously, with their financial model changing a little bit, with the Saudis kind of opting out. So if any one of you out there is interested in the golf world right now, and especially kind of the split and the feud and the Live Golf and the PGA, Scott O'Neill, the Live Golf CEO, on the Rise and Grind podcast with Thurl Bailey, obviously something you need to check out. Big T, a lot of admiration for you and all the work that you continue to do here in our community and obviously on the broadcast. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. Thank you once again for joining us.
I appreciate it. Can I say one quick thing? Because this basketball family is not that big, and just heard about the passing of former Grizzly Brandon Clark at 29 years old, man. That's just way too young. So my condolences go out to his family, and he made it to the top of this profession. It's just tough when we start losing players like that. So my condolences go out to Brandon Clark's family.
We certainly echo those. Unfortunately, breaking news: Brandon Clark, only 29 years old. The Grizzlies and his sports agency both released statements acknowledging his passing. So condolences to the Clark family, like Big T says. Thanks again, Thurl.
Thanks, Jose.
That's Thurl Bailey. You can hear and see him on the Jazz broadcast. Check out his new podcast, Rise and Grind. Live Golf CEO Scott O'Neill was last week's guest. It's a very fascinating time for that organization. They're losing the Saudi money. Does that mean the organization is going away? Players seem to be kind of jumping ship. And then Lee Steinberg, I bet Lee Steinberg's got some stories, man. Super agent to the stars is this week's guest coming up. We've still got some golf to give away, courtesy of the Festival of Tees. A really interesting and perhaps landmark case in the college sports NIL world. Nebraska and the College Sports Commission, they shut down 18 different NIL deals at Nebraska, and of course those went to appeal. I'll tell you who won that case next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, Ryan Smith, Utah Jazz owner and governor, has he's answered the question a couple of times. Hey, what about moving up to draft AJ DeBonsa? And he doesn't answer it in a direct yes or no, obviously, but here's an interesting quote from Ryan Smith. I think the next 40 days you're going to see some madness in the NBA, and it might or might not be with us. Maybe the best thing that Danny sees and Austin sees is just the path of just go and draft the best player available. And I don't know how we're supposed to interpret that. I don't know that we are even supposed to interpret that, but it feels as though Ryan Smith is going to be working closely with his guys, with the Ainges, and the quotes go on, and you can find this at the Deseret News. The quotes go on to kind of seemingly to point toward him wanting to defer to the expertise of the basketball guys. I don't know if we should take it at face value. I don't know if we should just trust that he hasn't developed this basketball crush on AJ DeBonsa and the idea of getting AJ DeBonsa to come play for his professional sports franchise that he owns after funding AJ DeBonsa's development, either himself directly or his close friends doing it. You heard my thoughts on that yesterday. There's always an emotional element to these types of decisions in sports. I mean, I've asked about, well, what are the Wizards going to do? And we asked Gordy today, and Gordy was like, man, you can't go to your fan base and say we had the number one pick and we moved out of the number one pick unless there's a really, really good reason to move out of the number one pick. And that's what I'm talking about with this emotional reaction and this emotional element to these types of decisions in NBA basketball. You don't get to tell your fan base, oh yeah, we're going to trade back to 9. We've been waiting to get to this spot for years and years and years. How crazy does it get? I mean, we're talking about the Wizards. We're talking about the Jazz. We're talking about these teams at the top. Is there a team at like 13, a team at 15, a team at 17 that is like, you know what? Let's hit the reset button right now. Let's start rebuilding right now, and let's move up and get something good. I don't know what level of craziness we're going to see in this NBA pre-draft process, but the Jazz have never been in a better spot. Literally, they've never been in a better spot in the draft, and the timing of it is also really fascinating because there's not a real consensus at the top that even if you're getting the second best player, I'm throwing up air quotes that you can't see now, even if you're getting the second best player in this draft, that he doesn't end up being the best player in this draft. When Victor Wembanyama was at number 1, we all knew that Victor Wembanyama was going to be the best player that came out of that draft, okay? And even if you are drafting 2 there, you're getting a good player, but you're not getting Victor Wembanyama. There are some people who feel that way about AJ DeBonsa. There's some people that feel that way about Caleb Wilson. There's some people that feel that way about probably folks a little bit further down. The consensus is not necessarily, oh, you have to get DeBonsa or else you're really missing out. Oh, you have to get Darren Peterson or else you're missing out. Like, all respect to Brandon Miller and even Scoot Henderson and Amen Thompson. These guys, they were in the same draft as Victor Wembanyama. We knew when we saw that draft, the number 1 spot going to San Antonio sets the Spurs up in a different light. We felt that way, and a lot of us felt that way in last year's draft with Cooper Flagg. And Cooper Flagg was excellent, but Cooper Flagg wasn't even like the runaway best rookie in the NBA this year.
No, Con Knippel. Right, Con Knippel almost stole, if you will, that Rookie of the Year award away from him. Flagg ended up getting it. But yeah, it was. I feel like there was a similar consensus last year that we don't have this year, even if right now it feels like AJ's the number 1 pick that the Wizards are going to take, or whoever or whatever happens with that number 1 pick. There's, like you said, there's at least 3 other guys that people view as franchise-changing guys. That's not the case with the last couple, notable number one picks we've had with Cooper Flagg, Victor Wembanyama.
And by the way, if you're the Utah Jazz, you want it to be this way. You don't want it to be like, gosh, we have to hit on our guy. We have to be in love with just this one guy. Even if I think that is AJ DeBonsa because of the history, it's better for the whole NBA. It's better for the Utah Jazz if this is like a 1984 draft, a 2003 draft, a 2018 draft even, where you get 3, 4, 5 players out of the first round draft class that end up being big time monster level players in their careers. Of course, you want it to be number 2 because that's the only guy that you're drafting. But the fact that you're not wholly dependent on that number 1 pick because of how deep the draft class is even if the Utah Jazz find something out like we all have in our mind now, it's either AJ or it's Darren Peterson. Maybe a physical comes back, maybe something comes back and it's just like, sorry, you can't. Washington takes AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson's got a kidney problem that is making this cramping thing an issue. And so it's not the right move to draft him. In another year, you might just be like, crap, we're screwed. Well, in this year, I think you go, okay, then we're picking Cam Boozer. And we probably feel good about that too. Or we're picking Caleb Wilson. We probably feel really good about that too. I mean, there's a reason why every picture you see of Ryan Smith for the next 40 days is just going to be him with a big old you-know-what type of grin on his face. Just like, yeah, I've got an NHL playoff team and I got an NBA team that's getting the number 2 pick and should be back in the playoffs sooner than later. And I got a fan base that is just starving for both of them to be great in the same building, which, by the way, is being rebuilt and redesigned as we speak.
Did you see the pictures that he posted on his Twitter and other social media of there's like a hole in the upper bowl where the seating used to be as they're renovating that? That looks wild.
Did you see all the conversation on like, apparently there's like a whole subset of you out there who just like watching construction happen, like
yeah,
like grown up toddlers who love
look at
Tonka
that
trucks.
Look at that bulldozer. Wow.
I mean, it's the funniest thing ever when you meet like a 3-year-old boy who walks up to you and he's just like, look at my truck. And you're like, yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Well, apparently some people never grow out of that. And they were all over Ryan Smith's feed the other day, just being like, hey, could you just do a live stream of the construction? I'll pay for my SEG Plus just to watch that. And no judgment for me. I think that's great. I still love dinosaurs and watch a bunch of dinosaur
Absolutely.
crap. If you want to do it with construction, great, wonderful.
So great. And it's like that and like watching airplanes take off and land that I feel like a lot of people just never grow out of, and I totally get it.
My dad is a train guy, okay?
Trains
like
too, yeah.
Like an actual train, steam trains especially, like an actual train guy, and also a model train guy. My dad can walk around in like a rail yard and just be like, ooh, look at this locomotive. Look at this Union Pacific bad boy. And you're just like, Dad, what? Some people are like that with the reconstruction of the Delta Center. Good for you. That's awesome. I'm gonna be more fascinated with the sports that are played out in that building. But if you want to watch the construction, more power to you. I like that as well. All right, we got to take our last break. We're going to come back. We're going to give away free golf courtesy of the Festival of Tees. 877-353-0700. That's how you will win by answering a trivia question as you get a free round to Lakeside, powered by the Utah Golf Association and Mountain Home Services. And we'll talk to Spence Checketts. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, free round of golf, courtesy of the Festival of Teas from Lakeside. 877-353-0700. If you could tell me, James Peterson did some legwork for us during the Daily Dump. We talked about the playoff shares, the extra money that NBA players get if they win an NBA championship. It was roughly how much? 877-353-0700. If you were listening during the Daily Dump, you'll have the answer to that. We'll give you a free round of golf to Lakeside, courtesy of the Festival of Teas, powered by the Utah Golf Association and brought to you by Mountain Home Services. Crosstalk, our final segment on the show, brought to you by Advanced Window Products, $2,500 off 10 windows or more, in addition to a lifetime warranty, in addition to it being done all here locally in Salt Lake City. The measurement process, the sales process, the manufacturing process, the installation process, and then, of course, everything that happens after they're installed, even if it's 10 years from now where you have your first problem, if it's 20 years from now, if it's 50 years from now that those windows give you problems, they are warranted for the life of your home. Advanced Window Products, Nate Orchard, Jake Weber and Company will take care of you. AdvancedWindows.com or 801-850-9100 and tell them OC sent you. You missed any of the show today? It's in the on-demand section of the ESPN 700 app. You can find us at ESPN700sports.com or wherever you get your podcast, The Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson and Spence Checketts in our Broadway studios right now. Wow. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next, and he's here for Crosstalk. Hi, Spence.
Sean, we miss you, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. I have no complaints.
Still in a safe location.
Yes, I have been sequestered from the super fans. You know how it is. Like sometimes you get people who just won't leave you alone because you're too cool. Or maybe I'm hiding. Maybe I'm in witness protection from my crazy neighbor. You just never know. I can't tell the truth on air.
Well, as I've listened to you over the past 2 days, you do sound like you're in a very secret, cavey type remote location. Just want to make sure that you are alive, awake, and alert.
Yes, doing great.
Good, that a boy.
We were talking about on the show today. We were talking about a little bit more about this draft, this number 2 pick overall that the Utah Jazz are going to use, and we're talking about the possibility of Darren Peterson, of AJ DeBonsa, of a Cam Boozer. All the questions are already being asked about, like, hey, do you love AJ DeBonsa enough to move up? Hey, does it matter if Darren Peterson doesn't like Utah and wouldn't want to re-sign with Utah? And every actual basketball person that I've asked about that is like, dude, you just try to get the best player to add to your team right now, and you cross that bridge when you get to it. And fans, we get to worry about things that we think are going to happen 4 and 5 years down the line. Nobody in this Jazz organization has the luxury, except I guess Ryan Smith, of worrying about things 4 and 5 years down the line. You got to play for your future. You got to trade for your future. You got to draft for your future in the short term, in pretty much every case.
Yeah, and I think Ryan's an interesting wild card here because it's been interesting, and I always say this, listen to the beat writers. They're on the ground locally. Listen to the people that cover your team locally, because the national narrative, now that the draft lottery is set, I'm listening to a lot of national NBA guys who are all convinced that Ryan has had this plan to get AJ DeBonsa to the Utah Jazz since AJ was like 15 years old. Like, they're all convinced that this has been going on for a number of years. AJ, of course, moving from the East Coast to play his high school ball here and then landing at BYU. And, so the national narrative right now seems to be the Jazz are going to do everything they can to get AJ. That's all fine and good. If Washington holds all the cards, if they just simply believe, like, we've done our work, our calculation is that AJ is the guy, they're just going to take AJ. So where it gets interesting is, do the Jazz believe that there's a gap between AJ and Darren Peterson? Because a lot of people don't. And there have been a lot of people that have come out of the woodworks over the past couple of days to kind of reignite the whole Darren's the best prospect in this draft, not AJ. I talked about this yesterday. from an NBA scouting perspective, college tape is additive. It's not conclusion. You don't make a conclusion off of 1 year in college when you've been watching these kids since they were 14 or 15 play AAU ball in summer tournaments and playing against each other with the ability to play on the same circuit regardless of what state you lived in. Once upon a time, that wasn't a thing. We also have the internet now. And there's a compelling case to be made that if you watch tape on all of them over the course of 4 or 5 years, that Darren Peterson's tape, when he's been right and healthy, is much better than anyone's, including AJ. So if you're the Jazz, even though there's this whole side narrative that many people in the league believe Ryan's got about his business to get AJ to the Jazz for years, if you put that aside and say, look, we don't really have a choice if Washington simply wants to take him, and if the gap isn't that big between AJ and Darren, we'll just take Darren and we're fine. Because if you do want AJ and you have to move up a spot to get him because Washington's going to grab him, Washington has the ability to do to Danny Ainge what Danny Ainge usually does to everybody else, and that's completely ask for everything and not settle for anything less. So one scenario that's been floated out there is last year during the draft process, and I don't know how much of this is true because Ace Bailey essentially fired the agent that was telling everybody that Ace wanted Washington. So I don't know if that's real or if Ace really wanted to end up in Washington. But if that's still something that's out there, if you're the Jazz, are you willing to move Ace Bailey and the number 2 pick for number 1 pick in like Bilal Coulibaly or something like that? And then are you sacrificing a year of developing a kid who I think has a chance to be really good? And if that's the deal, then just grab Darren, put him next to Ace. And honestly, that might be when the clock begins. The new Jazz time frame could very well land with Ace Bailey and Darren Peterson at 19, 20 years old because Markkanen's going to be 29, right? And you want him around, but in a couple of years when Ace and Darren are finally starting to develop into fully baked NBA players, it's going to be past Lowry's prime.
Well, it's interesting because Lowry's prime to me feels like the 4th most important thing in these discussions now. Like when Lowry was definitively in his prime, decisions were made by the organization to not try to capitalize on his prime and to tank instead.
Yep.
So, and part of that was the conversation of like, look, Lauri Markkanen is an awesome player, but he's not a number 1 on a contending team. And people around the league were like, yeah, we want Lowry. Trade him to us because we want him to be our number 3 in Golden State or whatever. And so I think, I love Lauri Markkanen, and he's a massively important player for this organization, but the timeline you're referring to is absolutely a shift away from him being the priority. And how do you capitalize on the youth of Keontae George, who's come a long way, the youth of Ace Bailey, if they keep him, the use of Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa or whatever. And Lowry's role in every one of those scenarios is as sort of the veteran elder statesman, but not supposed to be the best player on those teams.
Yeah, well said. And in a way, you kind of feel bad for him, other than the fact that he's a max money player, right? I mean, he's doing just fine. But probably the best 2 or 3 years of peak Lauri Markkanen were the past 2 or 3 years, and I think he's missed 104 games in the last 3 years. Like, we may have forgotten how good he is, but ultimately, what the ceiling may look like for a Lauri Markkanen or a Jaren Jackson Jr., probably the 2 best players on this roster. Every year prior to the start of the season, The Athletic, The Ringer, ESPN, they all do like their top 100 NBA players or so. And my guess would be this upcoming NBA season, Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. will be between 20 and 25 or 6, which is fine. They're both really good. But the one thing you don't have on the roster right now is the one thing that's the hardest to find, but the one thing you need to win a trophy, and that's a top 10, top 15 guy. Do you think Ace can eventually be that? Most people believe AJ or Darren could eventually be that. So if you do start the clock over, if Austin and Danny Ainge have decided, like, we think with Ace and Darren Peterson to 2, or Cameron Boozer, or AJ, they're all around the same age. We think our timeline starts now with them. And we think we're going to be good enough with Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. to give these young players a taste of what it's like to compete at a high level, maybe make the playoffs, maybe make the play-in, have a little bit of experience. And then by the time Lowry is reaching the end of his deal and we continue to be creative with the additions of talent, with Minnesota's pick still out there, Cleveland's pick still out there, and the ability to maybe grab some more young pieces, and maybe Keontae continues to grow. And suddenly, as Markkanen is kind of on the way out, does that change where Oklahoma City is at that time as well? Because they'll have some financial decisions to make. The problem you have is San Antonio. I don't know what you can do to get there. But look, all you want to do is give yourself a shot, right? And so, maybe you can develop these young players, and then 3 or 4 years you have a top 4 seed in the NBA playoffs, your home playoff team, and maybe Wembanyama sprains an ankle. It's like when Toronto won the championship and they had Kawhi, sure, but Golden State lost Durant, Steph, and Clay. They all got hurt, and Toronto hung a banner. So is there a scenario like that in play? But the more and more I kind of dig into this, the more and more I wonder if Danny and Austin and Zanuck and everyone over there is starting to believe, like, no, now that we lucked into this top 2 pick and now that we think we've got a gem and ace, are we starting the clock with them? As opposed to believing over the next 3 or 4 years with Markkanen still on the roster that we have a chance to win a championship, because I'm not sure they do.
By the way, Walker Kessler is the answer to Victor Wembanyama, just so you know. That he'll reject every shot that Victor Wembanyama ever takes.
I like the confidence. You could do worse. You could do worse than Walker, but at this point you'd have to have Lowry standing on Walker's shoulders, I think, to make that happen.
The old classic Little Rascals bit
Just
in the
ridiculous,
NBA.
dude.
Perfect.
Just ridiculous.
All right, stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.